Good morning, everyone. I am Angel Eunice A. Edgar, your presenter for today. And today we will discuss a topic that I hope everyone will learn. And I am your presenter for today. And before we proceed to our topic, let's go have a prayer first. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So we are now going to tackle our topic. So our topic for today is all about the 12 principles of animation. Do you have any idea of animation, or do you have any idea how does animation works? So before we proceed to our main topic, let's go first know what are our objectives for today. So what are the learners are tend to learn after the discussion. So our first objective is identify all the 12 principles of animation. We will know all um, the 12 animations of animation. Secondly, challenge yourself to do a lot of animation using any kind of principles of animation. So the learners will have to challenge themselves for them to able to learn how does the animation works. Lastly, create an animation using Adobe Flash that uses at least one of the principles of animation. So the topic is the 12 principles of animation. So what is the 12 principles of animation? So the 12 principles of animation is a method of photographing successive drawings, models, or even puppets to create an illusion of movement in a sequence. The first animated story that was created is the Toy Story. It uses a lot of photographing successive drawings for them to be able to have an animated video that would everybody would enjoy to watch. Next is we have the types of animation. So what are the types of animation? First is the traditional animation in which it is also called the drawing animation in which the artist literally have to draw every frame of the picture and photograph it and put it in animation. So second is the 2D animation where it can fall under also to the traditional animation, but it is a based and where it can be 2D without being traditional. The last one is the 3D animation, in which it uses three-dimensional for them to have a more specific and more realistic animated movie. Lastly, the type of animation is the stop motion, in where it encompasses object motion, claymation, pixelation, and cut motion, and more. So our first 12 principles of animation is the squash and stretch. So what is a squash and stretch? The squash and stretch is the most fundamental principles of all the 12 principles of animation. The force of the motion squashes the ball flat, but because an object needs to maintain its volume, it also widens on impact. So just like the ball, when it touches the ground, it squashes or it stretches, but for the maintaining of the volume, it also widens, and that's what you call the squash and stretch. The squash and stretch give an elastic, lifelike quality. The squash and stretch is all around us, but it doesn't seem that we notice it. But some or other things that can be done, that can is happening is doing a squash and stretch. Squash and stretch imitates that exaggerates it to create some fun. So here are example of the squash and stretch. When a ball touches the ground, it squash or stretch, and to maintain its volume, it widens also, and that like that. This is what you call the squash and stretch. Here is also one example of the squash and stretch video. It squashes and it also widens as it touches the ground. So our second principles of animation is the anticipation. So the anticipation is the preparing of an action to its main action. The player striking the soccer ball will be the main action, And the follow through of the leg is well the follow through. Here are the example of the anticipation. As you can see, he is also preparing to get his lollipop on. This is the anticipation movement. Our third principles of animation is the staging. So the staging is the most overlooked principles of all the animation. It directs the audience attention towards the most important elements in a scene in a way that effectively advances the story. Since the staging can cut the attention of the audience. So here is an example of the staging. The example is doing a magical thing where, as you can see, magic can catch our attention, and for him or her will be able to get the attention of the audience and see what would he or she will do next. Of animation is the straight ahead and pose to pose. So the straight ahead action is where you will draw each frame of an action one after another as you go along. While the pose to pose action is you will draw the extreme action of it. In a pose to pose, you will go to the middle frame, to the start, to feel in the frames in between, so that the animation will be more realistic. So the pose to pose give you more control over the action. You can see early on where your character is going to the beginning up to the end, instead of hoping you're getting the timing right. By doing the main process first, it allows you to catch any major mistakes early. The problem with it is that sometimes it's too neat and perfect. So because it has to be too neat and perfect, it is very time consuming. So here is an example in which you have to draw each frame to frame. This is the frame. And the pose to pose is this and this. So our fifth principle of animation is the follow through and overlapping action. So the follow through is when a moving object such as a person comes to a stop. Parts might continue to move in the same direction because of the force of forward momentum. These parts might be hair, clothing, jowls, or jiggling flesh of an overweight person. This is where you can see follow through and overlapping action. The secondary elements are following through on the primary element and overlapping its action. Here is an example. This is the follow through, and this is where the overlapping action. Just like the hair, it is where the follow through, and this is where the overlap here. Our sixth principles of animation is the ease in and ease out. So what is in and ease out? So when you start your car, you don't get up to 60 mph right away. It takes a little while to accelerate and reach a steady speed. In animation speak, we would call it as an ease out. So when you are going to start a car, the car doesn't start yet. It accelerates first, and then after it accelerates, it goes with its desired mph, and then the car would drive or would go right away. And that what you call ease out in the animation. As in an ease it, when you're about to stop the car, the car doesn't stop yet. It accelerates first. After that, it stopped. Here's an example. So our seventh principles of animation is the arcs. So life doesn't move on a straight line. So just like the animation doesn't move on a straight lines. It moves also on a circular paths, or where we called it as an arc. So arcs operate along a curved trajectory that adds the illusion of life to an animated object in an action. So the arcs also give the illusion of life of the animation. Without arcs, your animation will be stiff and mechanical. So this is one of the example of the arcs. So you can see it has a curved trajectory in it. So our eighth principles of animation is the secondary action. So what is a secondary action? So the secondary action is the something else doing of the character. It's something on top or in addition to the primary action. It is a behavior that enlivens the scene and adds nuance and authenticity. So the secondary action is the addition of the primary action of the character. And here is an example. As he faces his face, the secondary action of the character is this. So the ninth principles of animation is the timing. So the timing is about where on a timeline you put frame of an action. To see what this means in action, let's look at the classic animator's exercise. The bouncing ball that we saw earlier when we were talking about Scotch and Stretch. So a timing is where you put timeline on each frame of an action. Timeline on each frame of an action. It is what you call the timing. And here is some example. This is where it's timeline. And this action is what you call the timing. So our 10th principles of animation is the exaggeration. So what is exaggeration? So exaggeration presents a character's features and actions in an extreme form for comedic or dramatic effect. This can include distortions on facial features, body types, and expression, but also the character's movement. Exaggeration is a great way for an animator to increase the appeal of a character and enhance the storytelling. So the exaggeration helps the animation be more funnier and more dramatic in a scene. Just for the example for this, a simple cube turns out to be have a sharp thingy on his mouth. Our 11th principles of animation is the solid drawing. So the solid drawing is all about making sure animated forms feel like they're in a three-dimensional space. So the solid drawing making sure that the shape is in a three-dimensional space, or where the three-dimensional shape or space can be more realistic and your animation will be more beautiful than it is what expected. There is an example of the solid drawing, where the solid drawing in a three-dimensional space is where you can see the front, the top, and the side. Here it is, where you can see the top, front, and the side. Where you can see the three side of the thing or the object. So the 12 principles or the last 12 principles of animation is the appeal. So what is appeal? People remember real, interesting, and engaging characters. Animated characters should be pleasing to look and have a charismatic aspect to them. This even applies to the antagonist of the story. So in your animation, your character should be appealing, that can call the audience attention, and more charismatic for them to remember that character. Appeal can be hard to quantify because everyone has a different standard. That said, you can give your character a better chance of being appealing by making them attractive to look at. So, in your character, you should make it attractive and more appealing to catch that audience attention. We all learn now the 12 principles of animation. So, in that animation, you have to choose one principle of animation. And After you choose an animation, we will have now the activity. So our activity is where you create an animation using Adobe Flash that uses at least one principle of animation. Um, you will create an animation using Adobe Flash that uses at least one principle of animation. You will use at least one or more principle of animation. You put that in your video. Your video must be maximum of 1 minute and minimum of 30 seconds. That's it for today, class. I hope you learned something in our class today, our discussion for today. Again, I am Angel Inez Ayadkar, your presenter for today. Have a good day and goodbye.